Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a fascinating topic. Specifically, we're going to be looking at this 2-hour Finnish webinar on facilitation skills for librarians.
Oh, wow. 2 hours.
I know, right? 2 hours of theory.
Quite the deep dive.
That's why we're here to break it down into something a bit more digestible.
Bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. So you don't have to wade through all that theory yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So to give you a bit of context, this webinar was part of a 6-part series.
Okay.
All about library instruction and digital tools.
Weird.
But this particular one, really zoomed in on facilitation. Facilitation skills for both, in-person and the online setting.
Oh, interesting. So covering all the bases.
All the bases.
Yeah.
And it's really aimed at giving librarians, those solid teaching and guidance skills.
Makes sense.
To create that
Librarians are all about
letting people learn.
Engaging learning.
Yeah. Environment. And what I found really interesting is how this webinar, it stresses the importance of dual objectives when you're facilitating a group.
Dual objectives.
So it's not just about reaching a particular goal. It's also about building that sense of cohesion within the group.
So it's like you're trying to get things done, but also
community.
Yeah, like building that sense of community and connection.
Exactly.
I like that. It's very relevant nowadays, too, with everything being so much is online.
It is. It is.
Having those connections is more important than ever.
Absolutely. And speaking of connection, this webinar, it really dives deep into the power of conversation.
Conversation.
As a driver of learning.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. How many times have you had a conversation with someone and just come away with this, brand new perspective?
Oh, all the time.
Right.
All the time.
And the webinar, it even brings in Bloom's taxonomy to kind of illustrate this point.
Oh, Bloom's taxonomy. So for those who need a refresher.
Yeah, maybe just a quick reminder.
Bloom's taxonomy is it's like a hierarchy of learning.
Right, a framework for understanding different levels of learning.
Yeah, starting with those basic facts, remembering.
Your foundation.
And
then it kind of goes up through understanding, applying.
Analyzing, evaluating, and then finally creating.
Creating, exactly. And the webinar, it uses this framework to show how, conversation really pushes learners up those levels.
I see. So it's active learning in action.
Exactly. Because when people are talking, they're not just passively absorbing information.
They're having to explain their thinking, share their knowledge.
Right. And in that process, they're constructing these new understandings. Collaboratively, exactly. And the webinar even gives some concrete examples of how to put this into practice.
Oh, do tell. I'm all ears.
Well, one example is having learners, explain a concept to each other, but in their own words.
Okay, so not just regurgitating.
Right. It's about pushing them beyond that basic level of memorization.
I like that. And are there other examples too?
Yeah, using open-ended questions.
Ah, it's a classic.
It's a good one, right? To really stimulate discussion and get those different viewpoints out there.
And get people analyzing
exactly.
different perspectives.
It's all about that active engagement.
Okay, so we've got the dual objectives of achieving goals and building that group cohesion. And we're using the power of conversation.
Powerful stuff.
To really drive deeper learning.
Yeah, definitely. And another key ingredient that the webinar highlights is this idea of psychological safety.
Oh, psychological safety. And what exactly do they mean by that?
Well, it's about creating a space where people feel safe to speak their minds.
Okay, so they feel comfortable sharing their ideas, asking questions.
Even making mistakes, without fear of judgment.
That makes sense because if people don't feel safe, they're probably not going to contribute as much.
Exactly. It's that foundation for positive and productive group dynamics.
It's that trust factor.
Totally. And the webinar, it actually gives some practical tips for how to build that psychological safety.
Oh, like what?
Well, one thing is about carefully choosing your participants.
Okay, so who you invite to the group matters.
It does. And then setting clear expectations from the get-go.
Right. So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. And then, of course, encouraging a culture of open sharing and active listening.
Oh, and I remember they mentioned this really cool bingo game, right?
Oh, yeah. The Dialogi Apimison Palvoluxessa Bingo.
What does that mean?
It translates to dialogue in the service of learning bingo.
I love that.
Isn't that fun?
That sounds like a great way to break the ice
and build that trust.
Build that trust.
Yeah.
Especially in those like early stages of group development, which, speaking of group development, the webinar also delves into the different stages that groups typically go through.
Ah, yes, the classic stages of group development.
And I have to say, that visual they use with the tangled yarn, brilliant.
Oh, wasn't that great? It really showed how, like, the number of relationships explodes as the group gets bigger, and it just highlights how, like, facilitation can feel like untangling this giant knot of relationships.
Right, which is why having those skills is so important.
Essential. So you remember the stages, right? Forming, storming, norming.
Performing and adjourning.
You got it. And each stage, it has its own kind of vibe.
Its own challenges.
Yeah, and the facilitator's role, it shifts depending on where the group's at.
Okay, so walk us through those roles. What does the facilitator actually do in each stage?
All right, so picture this. The forming stage, everyone's new. A little awkward.
Getting to know each other.
Right, so the facilitator, they got to step up, set those ground rules, make everyone feel welcome.
It's a lot of leadership.
Very much so. It's about setting the stage for success.
Setting the stage, got it. And then we move into the storming stage.
Ah, yes, storming. Where things can get a bit...
Heated.
Heated is a good word. This is where you might see disagreements, power struggles.
Maybe some confusion about where the group's headed.
Exactly. And the facilitator, they have to navigate those choppy waters, encourage healthy debate.
Help the group process their emotions.
Keep them focused on that shared goal.
So, kind of like a referee.
In a way, yeah. Making sure everyone's playing fair.
Keeping the game moving forward.
Exactly. Then, as the group moves into norming, things start to settle down.
Okay, so they're finding their groove.
They're establishing their own norms, expectations. The facilitator can take a step back.
Less directing, more guiding.
Right, more like a coach, offering support, making sure everyone's on the same page.
I see. So we've gone from leader to referee to coach.
Pretty much. And then we hit performing, where the group's really humming along, They're working together well, hitting those goals.
And the facilitator.
They can take an even more hands-off approach.
Like a consultant, maybe?
Exactly. Just there as a resource when needed.
So from leader to referee to coach to consultant. Quite the journey.
It is. And then finally, we have the adjourning stage.
Wrapping things up.
Right. The group's work is done, and it's time to disband. The facilitator, they help the group reflect on their experience.
Celebrate their achievements.
Exactly. Maybe even think about how they can apply what they've learned to future projects.
So, a little bit of reflection, a lot of high fives.
Sounds about right.
I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like skillful facilitation is really about adapting
absolutely.
to the ever-changing needs of the group.
Yeah, it's like reading the room, understanding those dynamics, and responding in a way that helps everyone move forward.
And I bet this webinar gave us a whole toolbox of techniques to do just that.
No, you bet. It's packed with methods for activating and engaging participants, and some of them, they're really creative.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about them. What are some of these cool techniques?
Well, one that really caught my eye was the waterfall technique.
Waterfall.
Yeah, so imagine you ask the group a question.
Okay.
Give everyone a few minutes to, think it over. Jot down their responses. And then on your signal, everybody shares at the same time.
Oh, I like that. It's like this...
a cascade of ideas.
Yeah. Everyone gets their voice heard.
Exactly. And it avoids that thing where, one person kind of dominates.
Yeah. Yeah, it levels the playing field.
It does.
It's everyone to participate.
Even those who might be a little shy,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about that 3-2-1 method? That one sounded pretty interesting, too.
Oh, that's a great one for, reflection and making connections.
Oh, yeah.
So you ask people to think of 3 things they learned, connect them to 2 personal experiences, and then come up with one question that they're still, pondering.
Oh, I see. So it's taking the learning beyond just the theoretical.
Yeah, making it
relevant to their own lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with that question, they're also identifying areas where they want to explore further.
So it encourages that self-directed learning.
Exactly.
Now, webinar also talk about, facilitating in those hybrid settings.
Ah, yes, the hybrid world.
Where you've got some people in person, some online.
It's a whole other ballgame.
It is. And you've got tons of experience with this. So what are some things to keep in mind when you're navigating that hybrid space?
Well, first off, planning is key.
Okay.
You really got to think about how you're going to make everyone feel included.
Right, regardless of where they are.
Exactly. So it's not just about the tech, it's about creating that welcoming environment.
Where everyone feels seen and heard.
Absolutely. And communication is huge, too.
Okay.
You got to be super clear about how everything works, how to participate, what the expectations are.
For both the online and the in-person folks.
Yep. And it's always good to check in, make sure everyone's following along.
Address any, tech issues.
Right. And don't forget those nonverbal cues.
Oh, that's a good point.
You might need to be a bit more expressive, so the people online can still pick up on those social signals.
It's like you're performing for two audiences at once.
Exactly. And then there's different ways people can interact, like using breakout rooms.
Oh, yeah, for those smaller group discussions.
Or online polls to, gauge understanding.
Or shared documents for taking notes together.
Exactly. So it definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Sounds like it.
But with a little planning, it can be really rewarding.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot. From the importance of conversation to psychological safety to hybrid facilitation. What did this webinar suggest for, self-reflection and next steps? How can our listener take all this and actually put it into practice?
Well, the webinar ends with some really good questions for reflection, like what are your strengths as a facilitator?
Okay, so starting with the positive.
Right. And then it asks, what are some areas where you could improve?
Always room for growth.
Exactly. And finally, what specific actions can you take to develop those skills?
So it's about taking action, not just thinking about it.
Exactly. And the webinar encourages people to think about how they learn best, Do they learn by observing? By reading, by doing.
It's about finding what works for you.
And then going for it. And there are so many resources out there.
Workshops, books, mentorship programs.
You name it. And at the end of the day, improving our facilitation skills, it benefits everyone.
It does.
We become better teachers, better guides, and the people we work with, they have a better experience.
It's a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired.
Me too. Lots to think about and even more to put into practice.
Absolutely. Ready to wrap things up and leave our listener with one final thought?
I think so. Let's do it.
So we've really explored this webinar on facilitation.
Unpacked a lot of great ideas.
Definitely. From conversation to psychological safety, group dynamics, even hybrid settings.
It's amazing how much goes into creating a truly successful group experience, isn't it?
It is. And I think one of the key takeaways for me is that, facilitation is an ongoing process.
Always learning, always evolving.
Exactly. And that self-reflection piece, that's so important.
Yeah, taking the time to, assess your strengths, identify areas for growth.
And then actually making a plan to develop those skills.
Because there's always room for improvement, right? No matter how experienced you are.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn it back to you, the listener.
What's resonating with you?
What's one action you can take, like today, to level up your own facilitation skills?
Maybe try out that waterfall technique we talked about.
Or find a mentor, someone who can give you some guidance.
Or maybe there's a specific aspect of facilitation that you really want to dive deeper into.
There are tons of resources out there.
Books, workshops, online courses, you name it.
The key is to just take that first step.
However small it might seem.
Because even a small step can lead to big changes.
And ultimately, it's about creating those amazing moments where people connect.
Where ideas spark and flow.
Where everyone feels empowered to contribute.
That's what makes facilitation so rewarding.
Absolutely. It's about creating something truly special together.
Well said. That wraps up our deep dive into the world of facilitation.
Hope you enjoyed it.
And found it insightful.
And maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing, those groups engaged, and that facilitator's spark burning bright.